As a warning. To do so is no more than my right.
When returning home with the children before luncheon, I met a cavalcade of our party, riding to view some ruins. 2 splendid carriages, magnificently horsed, with Mademoiselle Blanche, Maria Philippovna, and Polina Alexandrovna in one of them, and the Frenchman, the Englishman, and the General in attendance on horseback. The passers-by stopped to stare at them, for the effect was splendid. The General could not have improved upon it. I calculated that with the 4,000 francs which I had brought with me, added to what my patrons seemed already to have acquired, the party must be in possession of at least 7,000 or 8,000 francs, though that would be none too much for Mademoiselle Blanche, who, with her mother and the Frenchman, was also lodging in our hotel. The latter gentleman was called by the lackeys Monsieur le Comte, and Mademoiselle Blanche's mother was dubbed Madame la Comtesse. Perhaps in very truth they were Comte et Comtesse. I knew that Monsieur le Comte would take no notice of me when we met at dinner, as also that the General would not dream of introducing us, nor of recommending me to the Comte. However, the latter had lived a while in Russia, and knew that the person referred to as an uchitel is never looked upon as a bird of fine feather. Of course, strictly speaking, he knew me. But I was an uninvited guest at the luncheon. The General had forgotten to arrange otherwise, or I should have been dispatched to dine at the table d'hôte. Nevertheless, I presented myself in such guise that the General looked at me with a touch of approval, and, though the good Maria Philippovna was for showing me my place, the fact of my having previously met the Englishman, Mr. Astley, saved me, and thenceforward I figured as one of the company. This strange Englishman I had met first in Prussia, where we had happened to sit vis-à-vis in a railway train in which I was travelling to overtake our party, while later I had run across him in France, and again in Switzerland, twice within the space of 2 weeks. To think, therefore, that I should suddenly encounter him again here in Roulettenberg. Never in my life had I known a more retiring man, for he was shy to the pitch of imbecility, yet well aware of the fact, for he was no fool. At the same time, he was a gentle, amiable sort of an individual, and, even on our first encounter in Prussia, I had contrived to draw him out, and he had told me that he had just been to the North Cape and was now anxious to visit the fair at Nizhny Novgorod. How he had come to make the General's acquaintance I do not know, but apparently he was much struck with Polina. Also, he was delighted that I should sit next to him at table, for he appeared to look upon me as his bosom friend. During the meal, the Frenchman was in great feather. He was discursive and pompous to everyone. In Moscow, too, I remembered he had blown a great many bubbles. Interminably he discoursed on finance and Russian politics, and though at times the General made feints to contradict him, he did so humbly, and as though wishing not wholly to lose sight of his own dignity. For myself, I was in a curious frame of mind. Even before luncheon was half finished, I had asked myself the old, eternal question, why do I continue to dance attendance upon the General, instead of having left him and his family long ago? Every now and then I would glance at Polina Alexandrovna, but she paid me no attention, until eventually I became so irritated that I decided to play the boor. First of all, I suddenly, and for no reason whatever, plunged loudly and gratuitously into the general conversation. Above everything, I wanted to pick a quarrel with the Frenchman, and, with that end in view, I turned to the General and exclaimed in an overbearing sort of way, indeed I think that I actually interrupted him, that summer it had been almost impossible for a Russian to dine anywhere at table d'hôte. The General bent upon me a glance of astonishment. "If one is a man of self-respect," I went on, "one risks abuse by doing so, and is forced to put up with insults of every kind. Both at Paris and on the Rhine, and even in Switzerland, there are so many Poles, with their sympathizers the French, at these tables d'hôte, that one cannot get a word in edgeways if one happens only to be a Russian."